Up, everyone? Welcome to a special afternoon version, Memorial Day, Past the Rock. And yes, your eyes do not deceive you. Jesse and I are on the same show for the first time in what feels like a month. So, Jesse, how's your Memorial Day up in Canada? I know we're enjoying down here with some hot dogs, hamburgers, and the like.
Yeah, we just call it Monday up here in Canada. We had our May 2-4 weekend last weekend, so it's a little bit earlier on, but lots of fun. Weather's great.
Yep.
Nice 20 degrees and sunny. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's all good up here in Canada. Happy Memorial Day. We usually celebrate that or observe that in November, but it's always a good time for some hot dogs and outdoor activities.
Yeah, we do Veterans Day in November and then Memorial Day in May, and obviously all the other great holidays. But I would say it's around 85 degrees Fahrenheit here. Sounds like it's probably a little bit hotter than what you're dealing with, but great weather for a barbecue, and obviously thoughts out to all the soldiers and in memoriam from this past year. So let's get right to it. We are finally at the NBA Finals. It seems like the NBA playoffs have been limping along, but last night Boston takes care of Miami in Game 7. And as Zach and I talked about last week, home court advantage means nothing.
Yeah, everyone was saying that this is one of the least exciting playoffs that they've seen in a while, and Game 7 certainly kind of flipped the script on that. It was a very
Yeah.
exciting Game 7, very close. I mean, Boston almost threw it away at the end, letting Miami go on an 11-0 run in like the last 2 minutes of the game and almost threw it away. Everybody's been talking about it. We'll come down to one of the final moments of the game, the turning point of the entire series when Jimmy Butler went for the kill shot with about 18 seconds left. The shot clock was turned off. They were down to 98-96. Max Strus had just hit a big three
Yep.
to pull them within two. Jimmy Butler pulls up from pretty much the exact same spot and just front rims it. Doesn't go down. Now, everyone's been talking about it. That was a bad shot, that Jimmy's not the 3-point shooter. What do you think of the look?
Well, it was an open look, first of all. Okay. So yeah, maybe he waits until, later in the shot clock or whatever to make sure Boston doesn't have any time. But he gave his heart and everything in that game and really in the entire playoffs. And I don't think you can fault him for saying, okay, I'm going to take this one. I do think you can fault him for, like I said, the time and what he did. But, he saw an open shot. He took it. Maybe he felt good about a rebound, although I think it was pretty much in transition. So I don't know that was going to work out. He said, it's on my back. Let me do it.
I completely agree. The guy who scored 47 points in Game 6 after averaging like 9 points in Games 4 and 5 comes out with 35 in Game 7. He was getting everything he wanted last night. You could argue maybe he should have drove to the rim. He was having a lot of success getting to the line the last few games, but I actually like the early shot. The time is not your friend when you're down multiple possessions or even one possession at the end of the game. So I think for him to look up, see that there's about 18 seconds left, take that shot and understand if you miss, you can always play the foul game. And the foul game is better than draining the clock and there being no time left. So he missed. Marcus Smart obviously knocked down both of their free throws, and then the game was over. But I still like, he had a wide open look, basically. It's Jimmy Butler. Even if he's not the best 3-point shooter, he's made shots like that before. And with a guy who's got damn near 100 points in the last 2 games, I'd say you give him the shot. I'm not letting Max Strus take that shot with the game on the line, even though he made the one before. But I think it was a good look. And Jimmy just thought either they can try and crash the glass or, play the foul game and hope. But I thought it was a good look. Sometimes you got to go for the kill. And they were down 2. They maybe could have gone to overtime, but with the way the Celtics were playing, maybe they didn't think overtime was their best shot.
Yeah, I think I don't think there was much thought that went into it. I think he was coming down the floor and he's like, look, I'm gonna take this shot. It's a wide open. I'll take my chances and here we go. And he missed. And you can't fault him throughout the series for what he did, put that team on his back. And that meme you see of him just at the scorer's table kind of doubled over. The guy plays tons of minutes and he kind of made a captain's call there and shot it and missed. So either way, we talked about it last week about how there's no home court advantage, it seems, especially in this series with these last 3 games with the visiting team winning. And maybe it's just, obviously there's not much of a home court advantage in Miami. The fans aren't too rabid down there. But do you think it's going to show up in the finals when for the Celtics? You think that crowd gets pumped up and gets in the ear of the Warriors?
I don't know. I think it could definitely come up for the Warriors. I mean, they've been good on the road. They've been spectacular at home. They are still undefeated at home in the playoffs this year. So certainly if they're going back to the Warriors' house, Dub Nation's going to be loud and proud with their 6th final in the last 8 seasons. So it's going to be packed in there. I think that also playing at the Garden is no joke. So it's going to be a lot of fun on both ends. But like you said, just the home court advantage meaning absolutely nothing. Miami coming into Boston and just absolutely dominating in Game 6, and then Boston coming into Miami and playing a very complete game all the way through. So we'll see what happens if the Warriors lose their first game on home court this year, but they do not have home court advantage in the final. So we'll see. I think it's probably one of their first times making the finals as the 3 seed.
Right. Because they just weren't the 3 seed that often. Yeah. I mean, when they made their run. So what does this say for Jason Tatum? First ever Larry Bird Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Where do you think his headspace is, and can he pull it off in the finals?
I know a lot of people were rooting for the Heat, but I was really actually rooting for the Celtics last night, even though it led me some Kyle Lowry. I was hoping that Jason Tatum would finally get a little more solidified as one of the cream of the crop, because had they lost this game again and Boston chokes the 3-2 lead, Miami goes back to the finals, everybody already loves Jimmy Butler enough. I think that for Jason Tatum, they kind of needed this after being bounced by LeBron for so many years, and then getting bounced by the Nets, getting bounced by the Bucks, getting bounced by the Heat last year. Or not last year, but it's been a tough road for them, and this has been a great revenge tour for the Celtics. They've had by far the hardest road to the finals, facing the Nets, Bucks, and Heat. Those were 3 of the top teams in the East, and Boston was the 2 seed, and they had to play all of them to get to the finals. I think it was much harder than the Warriors' road to the finals, but shout out to Jason Tatum. I mean, he played his heart out on both sides of the floor. I think he really emerged as a defender in these playoffs, being matched up on Kevin Durant and then on Giannis and then on Jimmy. I mean, what more can you ask from a small forward in the Eastern Conference?
Yeah, you can't argue with this run that they've made through the playoffs. I mean, it's pretty brutal. We'll talk about that compared to what the Warriors have been doing in a second. But all the credit to Tatum. And it's interesting to see a big market team actually get built through the draft rather than just signing one of those big free agents. Or obviously there were discussions of them being involved with the Anthony Davis trade for a while, but I think they realized they didn't want to give up on Tatum just yet. And, obviously that was the right decision to make at this point, the way things are looking in LA versus how they're looking in Boston. So, all support goes to Tatum. I'm really rooting for the Celtics in this one, just because, I would love to see him get a championship, and I think they can absolutely do it. Whether they will, another story. What about, you mentioned Kyle Lowry. Did not look too young and spry over the past 7 games. Is he done?
Kyle Lowry's not done, but I mean, he was shooting 30-something% in the series over the last 5 games. So he definitely had some very rough games offensively. I mean, even this season, he wasn't scoring as much as he usually does, but he was still right there as a playmaker and as a defender and as the guy that everybody hates if he's not on your team. But if he is on your team, you love him. He's I know he draws a lot of comparisons with Marcus Smart, especially in this past series, as someone who hustles a lot, but also might flop a bit. Smart's likely the better defender, but I mean, Kyle Lowry still has a place in the league. He's still one of the better facilitators and leaders that you could ask for to be a veteran point guard. He's not getting any younger, though. I think the contracts that he signs from here on out are likely going to get smaller. I mean, he's had a massive contract for the last couple of years, but if they want to bring him back, I mean, the Heat have so many guards. I mean, Gabe Vincent was actually phenomenal in Kyle Lowry's absence this year when he took that personal leave for about 20 games. So Gabe Vincent was great. They obviously have Tyler Hero as well, who's more of a shooter, less of the point guard. So we'll see where Miami goes. And this was his first year of a 3-year deal with Miami. So obviously he's got a couple more years in the tank. He said this year, quote, was a waste of a year, because if you're not competing for a championship, it's a waste of time, which is funny from a guy who's only actually made it to the NBA Finals once.
Yeah.
But I love the enthusiasm.
Yeah, I mean, he signed a 3-year, $85 million fully guaranteed contract. So, he's in Miami for now. Nobody's taking that on through trade after the way, this last series went. So it'll be interesting to watch. The Pelicans were very big on him in the offseason and got, beat out by the Heat. And I think everything that's gone on with them, I think they're probably happy for Lowry to go ahead and finish out at least his contract with the Heat. So, I think there's a place for him. He's going to have to become a role player, and maybe Miami had already started that process with him. He's a really expensive role player, but that's what a lot of these all-stars, once they get to the end of their career, they get that one last big contract, and he got it. And I think he can still be an integral part of what they're doing. But when he says, "Oh, it's a waste of the year," that kind of worries me as far as, how are things sitting there in Miami now that we've gotten eliminated, and what does that do for next year? So, because look, it's a team very talented, and they can obviously make another run like this next year.
Yeah, I mean they're obviously going to be contending again and again. I mean they were in the ECF 2 years ago, and then actually made the finals, and then they got kind of ran through by the Bucks last year. But we'll see. I'm sure that they'll be in the mix again next year. I mean they were the 1 seed this year.
Yeah.
And still went to 7 in the conference finals and were 1 win away, even though they kind of flew a little bit under the radar throughout a lot of this regular season, amidst a lot of the other drama with the Nets and with the Sixers and with basically whoever else. So we'll see what Kyle Lowry does. One other thing I saw that was funny, Al Horford snapped the longest streak in NBA history. I think he had over 140 something playoff games with having never made the NBA Finals, which is just ridiculous that he has over a season's worth of playoff games in 15 years and had never made the finals. Finally, I mean, he came through pretty big for them. He hit some big shots in some of those games, was great on the glass and great on defense for them. After his little stint with the Sixers, coming back to Boston and really being a key piece of their defense, especially with Robert Williams out. I thought it was hilarious. After they won, he was letting a lot of those emotions out. He was like lying on the hardwood, banging his heart out. And he reminded me of LeBron after he won the championship in 2016 with Al Horford crying on the court.
Exactly.
But also, he was crying because apparently there's a $5 million bonus that he gets if the Celtics make the finals. So I'm sure that there were some tears of joy in there and maybe a little spending spree after the game.
Yeah, that's a pretty good motivator for sure. But yeah, playing in Atlanta and Philadelphia throughout his career, obviously he's not going to get to the finals anytime soon with those franchises the way they've been going. But no, you got to be happy for him. He was a huge signing for Boston a couple of years ago, and it's coming to fruition. And, great little team, and they're in the finals. I think people, like you said, were surprised. Like the Heat kind of flew under the radar, but were the 1 seed. And the Celtics blew their chance in Game 6 to win it at home, and had to go on the road. There are a lot harder places to win on the road than Miami for sure, but they get it done. And because Jimmy couldn't hit the shot at the end, and so it's the Celtics Warriors. Let's move on and do a little preview. Game 1 not until Thursday, so I guess we're gonna have to watch some baseball or hockey the next couple nights. Which way are you leaning with this series? Where do you want to start? You have the Warriors, who kind of have been coasting through the West and not having, any series that were too difficult for them. And you have the Celtics, who just went through the gauntlet in the East because the East seemed to be a lot stronger, I think, top to bottom in the playoffs this year. So who has the advantage when it comes to that?
I mean, Boston's got to be a little tired after that hard-fought 7-game series. The Warriors, they breezed by the Nuggets in 5. The Grizzlies were 6, but they had that game where they lost by 50 points and then got their act together. And then cleaning up the Mavs in 5. I mean, they really haven't had too much of a struggle yet. We really haven't seen the Warriors get pushed with their backs against the wall. So we'll see if that comes out with Boston. I mean, Boston's likely the best defensive team that they will face in these playoffs. I mean, the Nuggets and the Mavs aren't particularly incredible on defense, even though the Mavs did shut down the Suns. But the Celtics team, they've got a lot of bigger players. They certainly have the size advantage. I mean, when the Warriors run this small ball death lineup of Curry, Clay, Poole, Wiggins, Draymond, I mean, if the tallest guy in the court is Draymond or Wiggins, And then if that's going against, it's just that, well, I'm interested to see who they match up with. Right now, I'm riding with the Celtics. I mean, defense wins championships, and yeah, the Warriors have probably one of the best offenses we will ever see in the history of basketball. And with the way that Klay Thompson's playing, you never know what can happen. But like shooters get streaky, and defense is defense. And I think that if they can show what they just did to Miami and really lock up a lot of those games, they held Miami to like 80 points in some of those games. I could definitely see that happening with the Warriors. They'll just take over the paint and take over defensively. So I'm riding the Celtics right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're absolutely right about the Warriors. Kind of a cakewalk through the West, and they didn't have to. They weren't on the side where the Suns were, and avoiding that. They get a Mavs team which kind of like hit its peak by beating the Suns, and then didn't put up much of a fight against the Warriors. So you can argue on both sides of that. They're not as battle tested, but obviously this is their 6th finals in 8 years, so they're not really worried about that. Maybe they get more rest than the Celtics, but maybe the Celtics are more focused. I mean, the talking heads talk about that all. You can go either way. I think it's going to be a really entertaining, excellent finals, especially since the last couple of weeks have not been that exciting in the NBA playoffs. So I'm looking forward to that. I think the scores are going to be way up. I think the defense is going to end up going out of the way here, and it's going to be majorly offensive. And the real question becomes, can Steph Curry finally get his Finals MVP? And I think for them to be able to beat the Celtics, he has to be the MVP. He's got to be putting 30 or close to 30 every night, and facilitating the rest of the offense. And I think if that doesn't happen, I think you're right. The Celtics win it. I think either way it goes 7. We'll see if the Warriors can win a game 7 in Boston. But what do you think about Curry? First of all, never having won an MVP, a Finals MVP, or his chances of doing it this year?
Well, given that they just introduced the Bird and Magic Conference Finals MVPs, I was looking at like who would have won it the past however many years. If it were around, Steph would have like 4 or 5 of them by now. KD might have snuck a few in there, but I mean, you're right. Like, it has to be Curry in this sense. Like, there's not going to be any Andrew Wiggins winning Finals MVP or Draymond Green winning Finals MVP. The only person I could really see getting it is Klay. If Klay just really is the one who scores more, if Curry's like kind of playing off him and Klay goes for 30, maybe even 40 in some of these games, I could definitely see it happening. But it's Curry. They all want it to be Curry. They were all cheering when he got the Conference Finals MVP trophy, but he's going to have his work cut out for him. He's got this year's Defensive Player of the Year matching up opposite him with Marcus Smart. And then don't forget, he's going to be getting switched onto by Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and Grant Williams and a lot of other really great perimeter defenders. And so with the perimeter defense that Boston has, as well as don't forget Robert Williams, who was also Defensive Player of the Year candidate earlier, they are going to have their work cut out for them. But I think you're absolutely right that Steph Curry is going to need to be the Finals MVP if the Warriors want to win this. On the flip side of that, outside of Jason Tatum, do you see anybody really running for Finals MVP if Boston takes it?
I don't think so. I just don't. In the end, it's an offensive award, I think, the MVP. So I think they're going to need his offense to be able to win it. So I think if any of those other players are essentially the Celtics MVP, that means the Warriors are lifting the Larry O'Brien trophy, because he's going to have to put up those numbers to keep them, in this series and obviously to win a championship. But looking up the former Warriors MVPs, it was twice Durant and once Iguodala. So the interesting next question to me is, does this season like cement that Kevin Durant, legacy issue? Obviously, he's got 2 Finals MVPs, but only with Golden State. Golden State wins without him this year. Does that cement that he needs to do something for his legacy by winning a championship either with Brooklyn or some other team?
It's funny. They won before Kevin Durant. They won with Kevin Durant. And like you said, if they win after Kevin Durant, I don't think it's a knock on him, given that he was the Finals MVP both years that he won it with them. And people love to say, oh, he just joined the super team and got a free ring. Like, acting like he didn't actively score 30 points a game in the finals and, outduel LeBron in those series. But It certainly says, I think, more about the Warriors than it does about Durant. I mean, Durant's a phenomenal player. I don't think he has to prove that to anybody. Even though, I mean, he certainly tried his heart out against the Celtics this year, but just couldn't quite even win a game. But
Right.
we'll see if he ends up staying with the Nets long term, or where his next chapter may lie. But as for the Warriors, I mean, the fact that they could really replace Kevin Durant and still have the core of Curry, Clay, and Draymond, and then add in Andrew Wiggins, add in a lot of really young players that have just grown through their system, like with Kevon Looney and with Jordan Poole, and now they also have Kuminga and Moody, and they've just got a lot of really great young players. And so, like you said, it's nice to see two teams that are mostly like homegrown talent. Like
Yep.
almost everybody on the Warriors, aside from Wiggins and a couple other names, has been a Warrior since they got drafted. And most of the players on the Celtics, aside from like a few names, have been a Celtic since they got drafted.
Right.
So I think it's, a lot of people are saying it's bad for basketball or something. People love to complain no matter what, but I think that it's a refreshing finals. And I think that seeing two, like you said, homegrown teams through the draft is just great to see.
Yeah, and I think it's great for basketball. If you're in a city like Charlotte, like Memphis, like New Orleans, that you can see the path is there. Golden State was not that relevant before, Curry was drafted and then everything else went on. So, to see a team like that is built through the draft with maybe a few free agent signings. Obviously, they had a huge one when they signed Durant and won 2 championships with him, but now the team that they have totally homegrown, and the Celtics, I think, other than Horford, for the most part are homegrown as well. And when they picked him up, he was a high level free agent, but not like a Kevin Durant high level free agent. So I think it's pretty refreshing, and I think that's what it's kind of the antithesis of the super teams that LeBron started in Miami, and then everybody just trying to build their big three, and now you can do it through homegrown talent. So as a small market fan of a small market team, I'm excited by it because I think that's the path that people need to consider. And if you're going to win in a small market, you have to be able to be successful in the draft because players just aren't coming to small markets like they are big.
Yeah, trust me, I can relate to that one, especially when you've never signed a big free agent in your franchise's career, and sometimes trading is the only way to go as well. But also just funny to always reflect on the way the Celtics got a lot of those players through that trade with the Nets that sent Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett and
Yep.
And everybody. And look who they got back for it. Finals appearance, 12 years later, 22nd appearance in franchise history, chasing banner number 18.
Yeah.
They certainly got a lot of banners to look through. One last thing while we talk about the NBA Finals. Who gets the privilege of guarding Jason Tatum for the Warriors?
Yeah, it's the Warriors are a tough defense to like try to figure out how how are they going to go about this. Obviously, you'd love to see Draymond try to take him out, but Draymond's not going to. I don't see much success with him coming all the way out to the perimeter. Maybe if they have some switches or something like that, he'll be there. I think they're going to, like I said earlier, I think this is going to be a very offensive finals, and I think they're just going to have to shoot lights out and realize that Tatum's probably going to do the same. And there's going to be a couple of games, 3 or 4 games, maybe even, where it's the, Tatum Curry show. And let's see who can shoot each other out of the gym. But if I had my choice as a Warriors fan, I'd want Draymond to be part of that.
If the Warriors or if the entire NBA played street ball rules where you have 1s and 2s instead of 2s and 3s, the Warriors would have won the past 10 championships. But I think they're going to say, you know what? They can score a lot as much as they want. Tatum's likely whoever you're going to put in front of him, he's going to drive right by. I think Andrew Wiggins is going to get the assignment. It just makes more sense in that regard. Maybe Klay Thompson gets on him a few possessions here or there. Klay's a great defender as well. But you're going to let him get his at the basket, and you're just going to say, look, 3s are worth more than 2s. And if we can hit our 3s, then we can hit our 3s. But don't forget, Boston is also a phenomenal shooting team. Pretty much everyone on the court can shoot, aside from maybe Robert Williams. But everybody on the floor, Marcus Smart, you got JB, you got Tatum, you got Grant Williams, you got Horford. You don't want to leave any of them open either. So they're a great shooting team as well. And I'm just very interested to see who the actual starting lineups are on Thursday. But we have a few days until we get there.
Right.
So what are we going to be watching in the next few days until game one?
Probably a little NHL, definitely a little MLB, but yeah, that's a pretty big gap, and the Warriors will have been off maybe a whole week by the time we get to them playing. But yeah, no, I think it's going to be exciting. I think the games could be in the 100 teens or 120s in some cases, because I just think the scoring is going to be way up, and it's going to be exciting, and it's going to be a lot better than what we've seen the last couple of weeks. Let's move on to the NHL. We have a game 7 tonight, Rangers Hurricanes, Eastern Conference semifinals. The winner gets the beautiful task of playing the Lightning, which haven't lost a game since dispatching of Toronto in game 7 a couple series ago. Rangers Hurricanes, every game has been won by the home team. This one's in Raleigh. Do the Hurricanes go ahead and close it out?
I'm going to just go with the flow. Every game has been won by the home team. So let's see where that ends us up tonight. I am more excited actually myself for the Oilers-Avs game 1 tomorrow. But who do you have in game 7 tonight?
Yeah, I think it's the Hurricanes. I think it's been so weird because it's not really even been that close. Like, the home team has generally won by 2 goals or more each game. So I think the Raleigh fans are going to be rocking down there in North Carolina, and the Hurricanes win. And then they get blown out by the Lightning because, nobody can stop the Lightning right now. They won the state championship by beating the Panthers, and they're just sitting there waiting for this series to end. Oilers-Avs is going to be exciting. The Oilers obviously beat my Flames in the last round 4-1. Their top line is so good with Draisaitl and McDavid and Evander Kane. It's, they just could not be stopped. However, the Avalanche they're just a great team. They head and shoulders above most of the Western Conference all year. So this is going to be a really good one. I can never root for the Oilers being a Flames fan, so go Avs.
I'm rooting for the Oilers. They were my finals pick to come out. So let's go Connor McDavid. And I saw Nathan McKinnon scored one of the best goals I've ever seen a few nights ago, only for them to actually end up losing the game in overtime to the Blues, but then obviously they clutched up the series in 6.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, Connor McDavid, he is a man amongst boys on the ice. I saw someone say that Connor McDavid may be the biggest gap between the best player and the second best player in any sport, period.
Yep.
That there's no other sport where the number 1 guy is just that far ahead of the number 2 guy.
Yeah, it reminds you of a little bit of Wayne Gretzky when he was in Edmonton. Obviously, that was even probably too far ago for me to remember, but he's amazing with somebody on him of how he can still keep the puck on his stick and make a play, whether it's, eventually shooting or passing. And look, he's got that great line. That is going to be a murderer's row line for years to come. In Edmonton, sorry to see it be there, having lost the Battle of Alberta, but that's going to be a great series. I'll definitely be watching that over the next couple nights, waiting for the NBA Finals to start. Let's move on. Just take a couple quick stories in the NFL. Todd Gurley saying he didn't miss being out last year. Do we think he's retired and done? And maybe should he be?
I mean, with those knees and that many millions, why not? I mean, the only reason that you would want to come back and play more is if you desperately missed being on the field. Yeah. But Todd Gurley said he didn't really, being out all last year didn't really bother him. I mean, he plays for the Falcons, so can you blame him?
Right.
Especially with he was competing with Mike Davis, Cordero Patterson, and Wayne Gallman. Surely, if he wanted to play, he could have got some playing time. And if he was healthy enough to play, sure.
Was there a slower running back room last year until Patterson got involved running the ball than those 3?
Yeah, it was just god awful. And given the nature of how running back rooms are going and how they're very much moving towards the committee structure and less stress on just one back, I still think that there's a place for him somewhere in the NFL. Yeah. If someone needs a backup running back, it's crazy to say that somebody who has more touchdowns than anybody in the NFL in like the last 5 years could be a backup running back, and someone who was just phenomenal, scoring 20 touchdowns in that one season. But I mean, hey, he's got definitely, if he's any smart with his money, he's got more than enough for him and his family to never have to work another day in their entire life.
Oh yeah.
4 lives. But if he wants to go play football, if he wants to go coach, little league somewhere or Pop Warner, I'm sure that there's a place for him to go do that. But I mean, I think there's no shame in being a phenomenal running back and retiring before 30.
Yeah, he's 27 years old. He'll be 28 in August, and it's crazy to think. I mean, obviously, running backs nowadays, you have your Frank Gores or who are the exception to the rule, but a lot of them kind of fizzle out around age 30. Him being 20, let's just say 28 this upcoming season, it's amazing how young he still is. But he did the last couple seasons look, not like the Todd Gurley of old. So maybe a few glimpses here and there. I just think once you don't miss it anymore, that's usually when players go ahead and ride off into the sunset. I think he is done. And even though there might be a place here and there for them, especially with the fact that you need so much running back depth to win. But I just don't see him making it back. It seems like he's kind of checked out and all good. He had a great career, as short as it was, and was a fantasy god for a couple of years for sure. So too bad that he's gone, but it just makes the Atlanta Falcons even more terrible this year. So no argument from me. The last piece of news, let's talk about this. The Browns have said they're not cutting Baker Mayfield. Supposedly, they've been talking to Carolina about a trade, but nothing imminent. What do you think happens with Baker Mayfield? Do you think by the time we get to week 1, he's still a Brown, or do you think he's somewhere else?
It's so hard to say. I mean, it's seemingly like there's just really no team in the NFL that I can imagine wanting him as their starter at the moment.
Yeah.
You go through even the teams that are absolute dumpster fires. They might have a young quarterback or a rookie or something that they want to test out. Like if the Texans, for all we know, are starting Davis Mills next year, or if Tyrod Taylor's fully healthy and he gets the reins again. But there's just really not that many spaces I can see him landing. I'd say it makes sense for them to hold him right now, given that Deshaun Watson is still completely up in the air for the next year. But got to be so awkward knowing he doesn't want to play there. They don't want to play him. There's not really much else for him to do, and there's not really anywhere else for him to go. And so they're kind of just holding on to him for the time being.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to take on that salary, so the Browns are going to have to agree to pay for, some half of his salary to ship him out. But also people are like, look, you have nowhere to send him, so we'll just be patient, wait till you cut him, and then we'll sign him for, the league minimum, maybe a little more than that. But, you got to start moving on and figuring out what you're going to do for this year. And you don't want to piss off your current quarterback because you're constantly trying to figure out what's going on with Baker Mayfield. I think in the end, they are going to have to cut him. You can't have him on the team. You're moving forward with Deshaun Watson and everything that is. And, the Browns have a legitimate chance of, doing something in the AFC. I don't think they come out of the AFC to go to the Super Bowl, but I think they'll be in the playoffs and they'll be competitive, especially with the quarterback they have now. So, in the end, I think he gets cut, but they're just waiting and hoping that it doesn't happen that way.
Wouldn't it be funny if Baker Mayfield had like the Nick Foles arc where Deshaun Watson like leads them to the playoffs and then like gets hurt or something, and then Baker Mayfield steps in and leads Cleveland to the Super Bowl? It'd be quite the story. We'll see if David can get us an advance on the script for that.
Yeah,
maybe if that's in the cards.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I just think at this point there's just too much drama to keep him on the team, and I'd be shocked if he was even around at training camp. But we'll see how it plays out. The NFL, you never know, and I'm sure he'll get another chance. He was the first overall pick, and let's be real, except for the last 2 years, he was kind of on a trajectory of getting better. So now the last 2 years have not been kind. So we'll see where he goes. But there's always a chance for a quarterback in another city. There's too many cities that, teams that don't have, an elite quarterback or even, let's say, a top 15 quarterback. So,
yeah, especially with that new weapon, Amari Cooper is going to be on the team. And I mean, obviously they lost Odell and they lost Jarvis Landry in the last year, but so that team's going to look a little different offensively. So we'll see, where they go with the last few. There's still a couple names that are free agents that are like maybe a little bit interesting. Most of them have since been signed, but you never know. There's still a couple options floating around the waiver wire.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you're the Panthers, it's like Sam Darnold or bust at this point. So
Yeah.
you might
Or
just
you're
have to
starting
live
Matt
through.
Corral in week 3 and you move on.
Yeah. I think if you're the Panthers, you just got to live through another year and hope to get a quarterback in next year's draft. So, but we'll see. It looks like two of the worst teams in the NFL, though, are in the NFC South with the Panthers and the Falcons. But awesome. So, Jesse, enjoy your week with a little less sports going on, at least until Thursday. So, we'll have a game 7 tonight in the NHL, a game 1 tomorrow, and then game 1 of the NBA Finals on Thursday.
Yeah, going to be a quiet week, but we'll see you next week, and hopefully we have a lot to talk about that week. A little shorter.
Yeah, I think we'll have a few maybe 240 plus point games to talk about in the NBA. So
we'll see.
Thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys later.